Hey, welcome to Love and Liberate. I'm Emilie, your host. I'm a self-leadership coach, embodiment teacher, artist, and an activist for love. Now, I don't mean the fluffy kind of love. I'm talking about the real, the raw, confronting kind of love, the kind that cracks you wide open and liberates you, creating a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. Because that is what I believe life truly is about. So through personal stories and inspiring, soul-stirring conversations on all things healing, embodiment, and spirituality, I'll help you navigate the good, the bad, and the ugly with tangible tools, fresh perspectives, and of course, a truckload of love. Here's to loving and liberating, one heart at a time. Hey lovely listeners, it's been a while. I've been pretty busy living a very different life to what I was used to, and it took up all of my energy. But here I am, and I'm back. I want to talk to you about history. And that sounds a bit dull, but we are living history today, you know. Today is history. And every single moment in time, we have the opportunity and the chance to change the course of history. However, when we read history books or when we're taught in schools about what actually happened, it kind of felt like it was inevitable, like it was always going to be this way, but that's not the case. We're all humans working together and creating together this thing called history. And I want to speak to our responsibility and our capacity to change the course of history, obviously in our own lives, but also in the greater world out there. Because I feel a lot of us are watching on the sidelines feeling, I guess, powerless or, angry, raging. The whole range of emotions is probably passed by you if you watched some of the news the last few months, years. So that's why I wanted to talk about that. So it's about responsibility, but it's also about capacity and possibility. And I think one of my favorite lines that nobody quoted for me, I'd love to say that I coined the quote. I don't know whether one can coin a quote. Anyway, we're taught that with great power comes great responsibility. We all know that one, no? But I like to turn it around because this has been my own personal experience. With great responsibility comes great power. So if you flip that one around, power is no longer something that lies outside of you and that somebody grants you, and therefore that makes you responsible for yourself or for situations or for anything. No, power is something that you gain every day you take more personal responsibility. And by responsibility, I mean your responsibility, not the responsibility that has nothing to do with you, because we're very prone to taking responsibility of other people's in our lives that we love, or taking responsibility for situations that happen that were actually outside of our power. I'm not talking about that kind of responsibility, because that is not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to seek into our own hearts and understand, where are we in power to change something for the betterment of ourselves and the world. That's what I mean when I say responsibility. Anyway, enough pre-talk. Let's dive right in and have a blast, shall we now? So I came up with the idea for this episode because I was watching a Trevor Noah comedy special on Netflix. A few of them, actually. And he had a few quotes that really hit me hard. One of the quotes was, "When history calls, what are you going to do?" And by that he meant, as I was saying in my introduction, we're thinking that history is something that lies outside of us like in terms of time, like it's behind us, and in terms of power, like we don't get to actively change history or partake in it. Actually, that's not true, you know. The Rosa Parks of this world, they decided to change the course of history by taking the power that they have into their own hands and execute it. And that is something that I feel in today's world. We feel so powerless, but we aren't. We are not powerless at all. Of course, you don't have the power to go pick up your phone and call Donald J. Trump and be like, so yeah, about this whole war thing that you're doing, I'd really rather you don't, so thanks. Of course, that's not going to happen. It's been a while. I've been where we lose the capacity of taking responsibility and owning our power. And it's normal. You know, you are not the odd one out. Everybody out there is completely freaking out and is losing their mind because so much is going on and we feel completely lost in all of it. But we don't have to be. And that's the good news. Forgetting about the rules that our own bodies and our own judgment and hearts and moral compasses have. And it's normal because we need to belong. That's like the most primary need of a human being, aside from food, water, and, shelter. That's belonging is the most important thing because it threatens our survival if we don't belong. Because just one human by themselves is useless. And this power that we have to have agency and to decide for ourselves is kind of overpowered and sometimes even brutally taken away by societies, by cultures, by governments. And even though we think that we live in a liberal, if you're listening to this, you're probably living in a very liberal, free state, giving you all kinds of opportunities to express yourself and to feel that you can express yourself freely and safely. However, there is so much context and there is so much cultural reality ingrained in every single one of us that we are not even aware of. And that is constantly overriding and overruling the things that we're feeling in ourselves. So that's why I'm saying it's not comfortable to take responsibility and to take actual action and take your power into your own hands that you have to rewrite history or to change the course of events in history and in the future, therefore. Because what Rosa Parks did was she knew she was supposed to obey to white people, and she just decided not to. Because in her heart, she knew there was no sane reason for that to be true. She felt it in her bones. She embodied her values by not standing up for that white person in the bus. And what happens today is there's so much racism, there's so much inequality, there's so much injustice constantly being showcased around us and happening around us. But still, there's so many ways in which we're used to it that we just, or we don't even see it, or when we see it, we stay silent because we think, yeah, that's kind of like part of the world, like that's just how things go. And that thought, that reasoning is the most dangerous thought one can have. Because if Rosa Parks never thought that it was insane for her to be less than a white person, then the entire world, obviously there were more activists in racism, but I mean, if nobody ever stood up for their belief that slavery or racism is insanity, then today we would still live in a segregated world and we would still have slaves. So this idea and this condoning of like, oh, but it's always been like this, or that's just the way things are, or that is choosing your own privileged comfort over the discomfort of equality. Because equality in today's world is freaking uncomfortable. We're used to live in a world that is unequal by default. And it takes a whole lot of courage to take a stand for something and to decide that something that you're experiencing or seeing or being told is plain wrong. And it doesn't resonate with your values. But even though I'm sure that every single one of you listening has experienced situations in which very blatant injustice was present, you didn't stand up. You didn't say anything. You decided that was just part of the deal. And that is exactly what this episode is about. And also what I believe history is about. All great acts of courage were acts outside of the ordinary in terms of what the times were telling you to be like or to perform like or to look like. All great artists, all great thinkers, all great mentions in history are, the majority are people who stand up for the truth and who stood up against the common ideas of their times. And that is, I feel, not, I mean, it's extraordinary to stand up, but I believe that what is in a lot of those people's, those activists' hearts is not unique. I feel so many white and black people felt the same pain and the same injustice as Rosa Parks did. Only they did not have the courage to take action. And what I want to talk to you about today is how you can take action. How can you feel that power and use it for the better? Because so many tiny things happen in a day where you have the opportunity and the possibility to take a stand. Like I said before, there's so much injustice and racism happening constantly around us. If you only take this small step of speaking up or behaving differently or defending someone when you see something is not right or defending yourself when you feel something is not right, that is already, it sounds like a small step, but it's already a huge step because you are creating awareness in a world that is pretending to not be aware. And I'm saying pretending to not be aware because I know that every soul, every heart, every human has the capacity to feel for another human and understands injustice and inequality when they see it. Of course, I know there's a lot of inequality between genders as well, and I see a lot of men around me not having a clue about what it's like to be a woman in today's world, and they have a privilege that is so normal and so evident for them that they don't even know they have that privilege. And that goes for a lot of white people as well. Well, for almost all white people, because they don't know what it's like to have the experience of being of color. So on one hand, I'm saying, yes, you have like the compass is in your chest, it's your heart, and it's there and it feels injustice. And on the other, I do realize that we're extremely, extremely indoctrinated with the ideas of our culture that is, by default, unequal. So that's a little nuance that I want to add, because that's a reality. In the same time, I'm also looking to find this doorway into your heart where you know that things are wrong or don't, don't sit well, and you don't acknowledge it because you think, oh, but this is just how things are. So that's the kind of like spark that I want to spark, light up, to make you conscious of that moment where you have a decision and where maybe something in your body, maybe just like a tiny little zing is happening, and you can actually respond to that with action, or maybe just in the first place with consciousness, with awareness, just knowing this is not feeling right in my body, or I'm having second thoughts about the way this person is being treated, or about a certain rule that just doesn't sit well with me. Again, you're going to have to be willing to be uncomfortable, because it's not nice to speak up, and it's not nice to not obey the rules that you were given. It's just a lot easier to just, go with it, and then, think what you want to think in your own mind, because they can't touch you there. Well, but you're also not touching anybody else out there when your thoughts just stay in your head and you don't take any action. You're not being true to yourself, and you're not being true to everybody who that resonates with that truth that you feel. And so that's the responsibility, and that's also the discomfort. And you have to be willing to take both, because one doesn't come without the other. And then same goes for power, and the power that we want to have in this world to change things. That's responsibility and discomfort. That's all part of the package. And this actually segues perfectly into the next quote that I picked up from Trevor Noah in one of his shows that really hit me hard, when he's talking about his visit to Berlin. And he says, going around the city and talking to the people and being there, he says, it's nice to be in a place where people don't bury their history. And I was like, whoa, that hits home in so many ways. I'm going to say that again. It's nice to be in a place where people don't bury their history. And obviously what he meant walking in Berlin is that they did not deny the Holocaust. There is many museums and many honorings and many ways in which the Holocaust lives on and is being taught to students, young kids as well. And he says there is a huge feeling of responsibility towards what happened and how they can make sure that it won't happen again. And they actually, by the way, I don't know whether you know, they changed the anthem after World War II. Because the anthem used to be like Germany, Deutschland, 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 the biggest of all or better than all or something like that. And they kind of felt that was wrong in the aftermath of the war. Anyway, they took on a huge action, basically, to make sure that history was not only not forgotten, because that's number one, but number two is that history would not repeat itself. But what is the main ingredient for history not repeating is knowing what happened in history. If you don't know what happened and what went down and how and why that was able to happen, then you'll never be able to, make sure it doesn't happen again. So this sense of responsibility of knowing in order to make sure that you can take the responsibility that it won't happen again is a huge aspect, not only of the greater history that we're writing as a society and that, as a world, but also for you on a personal level. And that is also something that hit me so hard about the quote that Trevor said about it's nice to be in a place where history is not buried. Because I feel that doesn't only go for places, it goes for people as well. I am so comfortable with people who feel comfortable with their history and who don't bury their history and who know the stories, live through the stories, and own their stories, Because we're all human, which means we're all flawed, and which means we all make weird mistakes and live through other people's mistakes. That's it. There's no other way. And being around people who own their mistakes, who know their mistakes, and who carry them not necessarily as badges of honor, but just as a part of who they are, not as who they are integrally, entirely, but just as a part that, was lived and on they move. That is something that makes me feel so safe and so seen and so welcome, because I do have a history too, We all have a history. And when I'm with people with whom I feel, like, oh, let's not go there, or we're not talking about that, or one should not touch on that topic, that makes me so uncomfortable. And I can feel the tension, and the tension that is alive in their hearts around a part of their history that is not welcome to be talked about or, felt or seen. That tension recreates that same history. I'm going to say that again. The tension that you feel around the things in your own past that aren't resolved, recognized, honored, or given their rightful place and space, that tension is present in your day-to-day life and will make sure that these things could happen again. Maybe not necessarily in the same shape or form or the same, level of intensity, but you are carrying something, you're holding on to something, which means you are making it and taking it into the present. And it's a crazy cool thing about healing. The moment you decide to move through a certain pain or grief or loss or memory or trauma, the moment you choose to move through it, the discomfort obviously is huge because you're reliving, not necessarily reliving, but you are experiencing the emotions and the pains and all the things that belong to that certain experience, which is unpleasant. But the moment you do that, you come out on the other end, and on the other end, there is a new level of understanding of your place in that story, another person's place, the context. There is like a macro vision all of a sudden. There is like a zoomed out perspective that you gain because of the distance you got to make between the thing that happened, how you experienced it, and how everything came to be. And that distance gives you the power to decide to do otherwise. And that distance is what we need. And that's why we're all on this healing journey nowadays, because we need you to heal and to look at the pain that is still in your heart and that you are repeating in all kinds of ways in today's world because it's too painful to look at. But everything that's too painful to look at, you will repeat and put back into this world. It is your responsibility to look at your own sore heart. I'm saying this with certain vigor. I'm well aware of it. I'm just very passionate about this because I've been on both ends of this spectrum. I've been the one inflicting pain that I wasn't willing to look at in myself that I was carrying. And I am on the receiving end of people who don't, or I used to be on the receiving end of people who don't want to look in their own painful history. And this is what we can do on a micro level to make sure the macro level is not being tainted with our own wars that we are having with our own history, our own parents, our family and friends. And I'm going to go back to the sentence that Trevor Noah said. It's nice to be in a place, and I'm going to add, and around people who don't bury their history. Because when you feel there is a space or a place or a thing that you shall not trespass, that is unsafety right there. But you might not know it. You might not know that there is something thou shalt not touch upon, but it's something you unconsciously feel like, oh, we're not going there. Nope, we're not talking about that. And that feeling, I wish for everyone in their own lives and in their own hearts and in all their relationships to be able to just like or should applaud you, for that matter, for doing work that wasn't supposed to be done in the first place, because aren't we all just equals, you know? And it's been a very confronting, uncomfortable, unpleasant book to read and work with, because it's also a workbook. You can do it in a group. You can have like a little book club and do the exercises together. But I'm telling you, it's not a joy, but it is an extreme joy to feel that I am taking that kind of power into my own hands, and that I, as a human, as a citizen, as a white person, as all the things that I am, as a woman, that I am taking my responsibility to make this world a better world. Not only for me and for my offspring, but for everyone and everybody's offspring. And a line that I love from her is that she says, "The primary force that drives my work is a passionate desire to become a good ancestor." And that touches me so profoundly, because that's exactly what this is all about. Like, how do you want to leave the world for the next generations to come? And how do you want to be written into history? Not only as a human in your own personal history, but like, what do you want to know that you did to make sure history is written the way it's written? And when your children or your grandchildren or great-grandchildren ask you, how come this and that happened? Or what was it like when you were there when that war was going on? Then I hope that you know exactly what you're going to say, and that it is going to be aligned with your values and with who you are in your heart, at your core. And if you think that you have no hand in that whatsoever, then you are blatantly wrong and mistaken, because it is people like you and me, ordinary humans, who decided to act, that changed the course of history. All of your heroes, all of our heroes, every single one of them was no better than anybody else. They just had a profound amount of courage to stand up and to do the right thing that they felt was right in their hearts. And that is what I want for you. I want you to do that too, not only for the world at large and to be of service, but also because I believe that it feels better and more peaceful to be aligned with your values, and when your actions speak for your values, especially if you're white, because that comes with a specific kind of privilege in our world today, and we need to use that power responsibly, consciously, with awareness, with love, and equally. Okay, mic drop. Wishing you a lovely rest of your day. Here's to loving and liberating, one heart at a time.